Well, the Congress has finally passed the Build Back Better Junior bill, or whatever that they're called, Inflation Reduction Act. But in all seriousness, the House passing it this weekend, the president's going to sign it. What does it mean for Oklahoma?
Well, I don't really care what they call it, but it's going to be great for the state of Oklahoma. The biggest thing that's going to do is it's going to lower prescription drug costs for seniors in Oklahoma. I think that's going to have a huge impact. There'll also be money in there in order to help low-income families afford their health care. I think that'll be good, especially with such low health outcomes here in the state of Oklahoma. Things that conservatives should really like in the state of Oklahoma is that it's not going to raise taxes on anyone that makes over $400,000. It will tax corporations that make over $1 billion, and they'll use that extra money in order to what? Pay down the deficit. Everyone here talks about being fiscally conservative, paying down our debt. Democrats in the House and Senate look like they're going to do it.
Maybe they should call it the answer to Echols, because you've been talking about inflation for so long. They put inflation on the name. Are you happy with this?
I couldn't be less happy, and you very rarely say this about my colleague, but that just ain't true. The $400,000 and above, if you look at the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, if you make over $35,000 a year, this is raising your taxes. Let's be really clear. It also hires 86,000 new IRS agents. They say they go after billionaires. There's 600 billionaires in the United States. The majority of who they're going to audit are those families that make under $100,000 a year. This is a massive tax increase. I love the fact that prescription drug coverage, there's absolutely no doubt, and I do disagree with my Republican colleagues that say there's nothing good in the bill. I love the changes to prescription drugs, but let's not kid ourselves. This is a ridiculous tax increase on the middle class with new IRS agents with a little bit of good stuff sprinkled in. This bill is garbage.
Okay, well, that sounds like a stinker if you're taking that, sum it all up with him. Okay, a lot of runoffs. We got runoffs approaching in a couple of weeks. Your thoughts about the top issue of the week?
Well, we had some great runoff news this week, and get out there, vote in these runoffs. These runoffs are important. So often we have such low voter turnout inside these runoffs. What I think the big issue of the week is we had the debate in the state superintendent's race, April Grace versus Ryan Walters. It was a great debate. I think the winner of this race is most likely going to be the next state superintendent. With education being a major issue, how do we continue to keep our teachers in? How do we give more opportunities for parents to be involved in their education? There was a great job in that debate, and I think that was a huge issue, paying attention to our runoffs.
Okay, there could not be two more diverse views about the future of education than those two candidates. Your top pick of the week?
Well, there were two. I do think the debate was important, although I think one of the candidates is actually running for the job and the other is just running to be a commentator on Fox News. The other big issue that came out this week was the Republican Women's Caucus, House Caucus, came out against candidate Sean Roberts, who's running for Labor Commissioner, because of his recent past of domestic violence issues. They've actually asked him to step down. These are women that served with him in the House of Representatives here in the state of Oklahoma. I think that's huge news in a Labor Commissioner race. Again, I think domestic violence is a big issue, and people need to pay attention to that when they go to the polls and elect someone.
Yeah, the second time in a couple of months Storm Jones has broken us through on harassment or DV that the media clearly is struggling to get those stories out, and they're uncomfortable with. We'll talk about that in the future. Segment number 2, we're going to be talking about education. Guess what? When we come back. Back to school this past week, and it's interesting, one of your colleagues, Representative Mark McBride, has come up with a plan to give teachers a pay increase right away. Your thoughts?
Well, absolutely. There's no member in the state of Oklahoma that's done more to address education than our Education A&B Chair, Representative Mark McBride. He spearheaded last year the tuition waivers that we were giving to people to come into the education field. And now Representative McBride suggests we take one of the $1.3 billion that we have available in federal stimulus money and start using that for both longevity bonuses, so re-signing teachers, encouraging them to come back, and for relocation bonuses. This is a serious suggestion that we need to take seriously. And when you have somebody like Representative Mark McBride, who's worked so hard on this issue, he works well with the public education schools.
He does.
I think there's a great chance we're going to find a way to get this done.
Interesting that it could happen.
Yeah, I actually think this is a great idea, and it wouldn't be out of the question to do so. There are other large school districts. I know Las Vegas School District was doing this very same thing, using federal money in order to pay right now bonuses or retention bonuses, trying to keep people in the teaching profession. Look, this is a huge problem. Losing teachers, we have a record number of alternately certified teachers because we're losing people from the field. this is a real suggestion. I agree with my colleague, Representative Echols. Representative McBride has done a fantastic job protecting public education in his tenure as chair of A and B Education. And I would also add that he has continually been against vouchers in education, and so he should keep up the good work.
You know, if you want to start a fist fight, just talk about education over lunch, okay? It is the we talked about the superintendent race, but we're going to be talking about public policy and education in the future. Where do we need to go from here?
Well, look, we just need to keep our focus on the things that matter the most, which is educating our children. I have 2 kids in Oklahoma City Public Schools, and nothing matters more to me than making sure that my kids have an opportunity for success. And that will only happen if we continue to have quality teachers in our classroom, if we respect them with the kind of pay that they deserve in order to stay in an important profession, and if we stop, especially politicians, if politicians will stop picking on educators week in and week out, telling them how bad they are, telling them how woke they are, and regurgitating all of this national stuff that has nothing to do with teachers in the classroom or kids that need an education. We're 49th in education in the country, and we're not going to get better with that attitude.
Interesting point. You know that, and I think you flagged, we're going to be hearing public policy on education this next session. Your thoughts?
Well, I agree with my colleague. What we need to do is focus on a good teacher in the classroom and focus on educational outcomes. Focus on what schools are doing good. We should mention Moore in my district is already offering these retention bonuses and has already taken that step. But what we have to do, and during my tenure, I'm very proud, we've raised education funding to a higher level than any time in the history of the state, and a bigger increase during my time as floor leader. Now, that being said, everything in education has to be towards the student. We need to keep the parents involved, and we do need to raise teacher pay to a point where we have a good teacher that is respected and valued inside that classroom. Yes, there's a lot we disagree on education, but there's a whole lot we agree on. So let's start listening to some of the talking heads like Representative Mark McBride that are wanting us all to move forward together and better educate our children.
Get your popcorn and seatbelt for next session. See this again at news9.com/yourvotecounts. Follow me on Twitter @MitchellTalks.